Hello there, welcome back to the Reverse Raj campaign Abridged in Hearts of Iron 4, where last time we invaded the United Kingdom, and it was surprisingly easy. Generally, our new World War III has gone well to start with. We capitulated the UK, the other allies didn't really invade me like I thought they would, and we've invaded them. We've actually taken out Denmark and started on Sweden. Plenty more stuff to do to win this war and cement our claim to the UK, though. It looks like the Allies are currently distracted trying to invade Italy, which is absolutely perfect. The UK is probably wasting a whole bunch of troops on that and not counter-invading the UK. Norway is also doing something against the Soviet Union. That's probably helping us out with a nice distraction. We're now going to officially abandon South America. I was setting up this defensive line to try and keep some of it, but it's just so annoying to have this massive army not being used for anything particularly fast. So I thought, let's just give it all up. We're not even really supposed to have that territory. I got it by somewhat inadvertently cheating. So we'll let the enemy occupy it and maybe deal with that later on. In the meantime, we can redeploy this army to help the Soviets with this Norway situation, just to get them started on something else. And then we'll look for a more strategic use for a gigantic pile of troops. It's going to take them a while to escape the jungles. They're very deep into the Amazon right now, but they'll be back one day. Got some issues with our Swedish front as some of the reinforcements are trying to drive to it from the other side for some reason. Luckily I happened to catch that and micro them back via a regular route before some disasters occurred. Also on the front line, the enemy aren't even defending all of it, so I figured we might as well advance. I mentioned last time we can't advance too far just because our army will get too wide, but we can go some distance before that's going to happen. The war with Yunnan, which was separate to World War III, is over now. The result is just that we got all of our territory in the area back, and Yunnan itself is now a puppet state of the Reverse Raj Union. Handy. There is a tiny bit more action in this area, because a couple of ports are still under European control, so we'll take them down. Then we can use those ports to ship this fresh army off to do something else. So it looks like we're going to have plenty of reinforcements to commit across the globe in this part. Let's see if we can do anything with them. While deciding what to do, I took a look at Southeast Asia in general. The Allies are all over the place, and we even have a tiny front against them over here, but it's so choke pointy and lack of suppliesy, I bet, that I didn't really want to push that front. My general plan in Southeast Asia is to let the Allies take everything, which they're currently in the process of doing. Instead, I thought, let's bring this army over to the Middle East, because Iraq is on our side. We can push the French and British out of the Middle East in general and just deny them stuff, and maybe even go down into Africa as well from there. So we'll start that journey. Back in Sweden, our advance continues. Still plenty of tiles that aren't occupied, and the only thing holding me back from advancing is lack of troops. So once those reinforcements arrive, we'll be in a better position. We can also pull in the Salvadorians into our Reverse Raj Union. I'm pretty sure Central America is going downtown for our alliance, so we've just doomed them by pulling them in. But it's nice to have them on board, spiritually at the very least. Now the inevitable finally happens. You might notice on the right hand side of the screen, there are billions of alerts scrolling past all the time. We're being naval invaded quite a lot, and a lot of them are just random islands around the globe that I control for some reason that I'm losing. Here was a big one that I missed though. They have actually invaded India, and it's the UK in fact. Instead of invading the UK, they invaded India. It's happening again, boys. They've bamboozled me. But by sheer luck, the army that I was redeploying to the Middle East is driving right past this area to get there. So we're actually going to be able to contain this. This could have gone much worse if our armies had just been somewhere else. We'll redeploy. It takes me a long time to work out the frontline controls because you have to delete everything. We need a button which is like drop everything you're doing and do only the next order that I give you. It turns out this whole situation is going to be easy to contain because the UK has cunningly invaded with only like 3 or 4 divisions in total. So already this small amount of territory they've taken is too big for them to defend, and we can just crush them back into a corner. That's fine then. Setting up here to take out the Norwegian pocket on the Baltic. That should free up some Soviet troops as well, who so far haven't really helped us out very much. Once we get here, the situation's real messy. I'm not quite sure what's going on. There are lines all over the place, a classic Hearts of Iron mess. I figured, well, let's just order our guys to start the offensive. Maybe they can work out something to do with this enormous mess and make it less messy. At this stage we have so many troops that are not committed that actually taking losses in battle doesn't really matter. We can take some dodgy battles and lose troops with the AI headbutting against strong positions, things like that, because I can't deploy my reserve troops fast enough to make new divisions anyway. And here's another one. Among the other warnings, apparently, was one for this. Looks like the UK is actually being invaded by Spain at the moment, and it's going to pay off the fact that I left all these troops behind in case this happened. So we'll quickly contain that. Would have contained it faster if there'd been a massive pop-up telling me we're being naval invaded. That's all I really want. Here I was checking the list, we've got a whole bunch of invasions, and it's like the 5th one back was the UK one. We totally missed that. I don't know if my advisors just don't want to bother me with the news or something, but do tell me if something bad's happening, rest of the staff that presumably exists in the in-game universe. At least in Sweden, things are good. We advance up towards these large lakes, which make the front line actually a bit shorter than it looks, so we can go further than I originally planned. But we can't really go further than that. We're reaching the edge of our troop capacity in this area. We'll need some more to keep going safely. With the invasion of India dealt with, our forces now go back to the original mission. We're coming back to the Middle East, where the French part is very vulnerable to being cut in half, as you can see, very near the coast. We want to push on through, grab some ports to help with supply, and then just flatten the enemy out of this area entirely, which should be possible because there aren't that many units here. Our allies have already got started on it. We've got another invasion up at the very top of the UK. Looks like Scotland's going down, but we're up there stopping anything bad from happening. You can see on the right, there's just stuff all over the place, and I am paying more attention now, jumping around to see all these invasions. They're mostly ones I'm not reacting to though. The weird liney situation over with the Norwegian invasion appears to have been somewhat resolved. Now it's just a few pockets, we'll take them out, and of course that's going to delete all of those divisions, making Norway weaker for a long time. With all of those troops freed up after doing that, I'm going to send them down to the Romanian front, where they appear to be pushing into the Soviet Union, so we need to help them out. We're going to push them right back, although they're also at war with Hungary, I believe, and are getting pushed back by that as well. So they're actually near capitulation despite having a lot of our territory. In the Middle East, things are looking good. We've shrunk our front line down to just the United Kingdom's bit, and we want to push down to the Sinai Peninsula to shrink that even more and start working on Egypt. Overall, this whole front is going quite well. We've already deleted a bunch of enemy divisions. That guy there is going to go down as well as we just finish off those last pockets with some spare tanks. We're struggling with the lack of infrastructure and the large amount of desert and mountain tiles. It's slow to advance, but that's going to affect the enemy as well. The only real issue is that while microing that, well, back in the UK something bad's happened. I didn't even notice it at first. It was on the screen for a few seconds before I was like, wait a minute, what's going on here? We've got 3 more naval invasions going on at the same time. So now we need to split our forces up and try to clear up all of this mess. It's getting a bit silly, and it's mainly Spain for some reason doing all of these invasions. This was the point when I started playing the campaign with the speed turned down to the minimum so that I could be more likely to notice these things as they develop, but it does mean it takes a long time to make any progress, although it means all the better for microing. We can micro real hard and get some very efficient frontline pushing against the Romanians here. We didn't quite have enough strength to just pop off an offensive plan, so I'm looking for the weak points. We can close out the salient, and towards the coast there were some really weakly defended parts of the line, or not defended parts of the line, the old classic, so we can move on through here and advance the line up, grabbing a port as well. That's all good. Now randomly, in the comments during the release of this series, someone mentioned that you can use the debug commands to switch to other factions to see what they're doing. So I decided to try this out with the Soviet Union, because I noticed they didn't have many troops, they weren't doing a very good job defending their own borders against the Romanians. I was like, what's even going on with the Soviets right now? So here we are, now playing as the Soviets thanks to some cheaty magic. We can see that they have over 11 million troops to deploy, and they are in the process of deploying them. So they're still getting back up to strength after the previous wars and regime change. But look at this. They have got the optimal 40 width division with logistics companies, the thing that makes supplies less of an issue. That's great for us, it will help us fighting alongside them. That was the reason someone recommended changing to other factions, so you can force them to use logistics companies to get around the supply issues in the game. But looks like it's good. I didn't bother checking any others because it would just take a while. I also got stuck as the Soviets because I didn't know the code to get back into my country. I ended up having to reload a save. But nice to see something good is happening there. We've got this crazy twisted waypoint order thing going on here as we try to clear up the mess in northern England. That's going okay. The newspaper tells me that we've taken Stockholm, so I decided to go and take a look, and indeed we have. The use of lakes here helped out again to make the front line a bit less wide than it looks, and we're slowly but surely feeding in divisions that are literally driving from India to that location. Eventually that army is going to run up towards full size and be able to advance even more. Things are going well against Romania. We've taken a large part of the coast. Now we need to fold this on in and take out this big pocket. We did struggle to advance in a lot of places. I think the Romanians must have good divisions or high entrenchment or something, because they seem to be more resistant to being overrun. Like, often you could just attack with 2 divisions against their 1 and you'd win. Here we had to be a bit more tactical, doing things like this where you can attack from multiple directions to increase the combat width so that our wide divisions can all fight at once. You have to go into the real numbers to see if that's even happening, but I like to just presume that maybe it is, and some good things will happen. Looks like southern England is going to get cleared up. The divisions that attacked appear to not be there. I don't know who's taking our territory, but we're going to be able to get it back by driving around wildly with our tanks. We're inching forward still in Sweden. I did notice that they weren't defending that heavily, so it's so tempting to keep going, because I probably only need 1 division per tile to defend that front line, so it's a bit risky, but I just kept advancing whenever I felt bored and wanted to take a look. Here's the other big advance we're trying to do. I'm trying to get into Egypt, and it's kind of working. It was very slow going, especially crossing the rivers and attacking some fortified positions, but it's happening eventually. I did have to use 1 nuke here because there's a big stack of enemy troops on a fortified desert tile that I just couldn't take after several attempts, but nuking them solved our problem. And it doesn't really matter when it comes to infrastructure damage or anything, because it's just a little corner tile. It's all fine. And once we're done there, we'll have some more division deletions for the Allies in general. We're taking out quite a few of their troops with some nice little surrounds across all of our various fronts. Handy. Going to be doing the same thing here against Romania. We've got a bit of a Hearts of Iron 4 Nightmare Lines situation happening again as the front lines are trying to adjust in some way, and I think it's factoring in that Hungary are here. Hungary aren't aligned with either side, I think, in the war, so I don't really know what's going on, and the front lines don't know what's going on either. The long story short though, we do make the mess a little bit less nightmarish and push the enemy into a corner, and then as we apparently fail to make that attack, and then it starts working in a classic Hearts of Iron fashion, the enemy capitulates. So Romania are now out of the war. That will hopefully help the Soviets out. The war there still completely balanced. It feels like we're winning, but both sides are equally matched, it seems, according to the calculations. I think that the Allies have lots of troops that are wasting time gradually conquering all of the stuff we're not even looking at in this series. So maybe they'll show up later, maybe it will be too late, maybe they're distracted. What I really should do now is go and help the Soviets with Finland, but this was so much juicier. There's this big UK-France pocket that's just sitting here, begging to be surrounded. We can delete all of these divisions if we just push slightly along the coast and stop them being able to get towards the ports. So I sent the entire army to do that as soon as possible. Meanwhile, it's still slow going in Egypt with some low organization, low supply attacks, and it takes a long time to move between the regions, and we're on the slowest speed. That makes it slow going for sure. But it's happening now. We're pushing to the impassable terrain part of Egypt, which will effectively surround the enemy and cut off parts of them. It just doesn't quite look like it at first. And here we are making our big assault on this huge pocket. There's a whole load of divisions that we can take out of the game if we just surround and pound them. The Soviets are keeping the enemy occupied on the other side. We're going to use overwhelming numbers and not many tactics to just squeeze them from the back. Here we've achieved the cut-off-esque thing where to the left it's just impassable desert, so this is now a pocket in front of us towards Alexandria. We can start squeezing them out into a smaller and smaller area and try and take some ports ourselves. That might help with the supplies. But as mentioned, it was difficult going, although the enemy at this stage are starting to just run out of guys. I bet they can't really be resupplied properly here because the UK has capitulated and their stuff's all over the place. Not quite sure how it works with capitulated nations. I like to believe they're not producing new tanks and shipping them there or something, so their strength will be going down. Here is the death of that pocket. We've made it small enough. It's time to just give a gigantic order for our entire field army to step in and crush it somehow. Cut to a bit later. When it's happening, every division in that pocket is gone. That's going to massively weaken our enemies and strengthen our allies. The Soviets will have a whole bunch of troops freed up by not having this weird interior front. That might help out with the Finland situation, and we're going to send troops to do the same. I accidentally stopped a naval invasion again in the UK when some tanks I just left in Cardiff by chance actually got attacked and were able to repel an invasion. Well done there. Here's a nice bit of economic micro. I noticed that Iraq was taking over all of the places I'm actually conquering in Egypt, so I thought let's talk to Iraq and try to let me have them. They were willing to do that. Absolutely perfect. When the AI is willing to give you the front line, you can come in and start roading the place up. Of course, the Allies control essentially all of Africa, apart from the Italian bits. So we've got a very long way to go here. We need to slowly advance, constantly building docks and roads behind us to have any chance of remaining in supply. And if we can do that, we might be able to be more in supply than the enemy and actually gain an advantage. We've got billions of civilian factories, so it's no problem to spam tons of infrastructure all the time. I thought I'd say a word about the air war, which I haven't really been mentioning this whole time. Essentially, it's going really well. We have absolutely billions of planes all over the place. And wherever I have troops, I've been trying to maintain air superiority so that we don't get nuked, and so that I always have the option to nuke the enemy if I so desire. But we're really not being that contested. The Allies aren't doing very well in the air at all. We have air superiority wherever I want it, effectively, and that means we can be doing the close support attacks on actual fighting, which just makes your fights a bit better in some unspecified way. People were saying it's overpowered in the comments of a previous series, so that's good. We've got the overpowered stuff happening right now. Also happening right now, well, it's November, probably the perfect time to start invading Finland. So here we go, we're going to do the winter war. The snow is going to be speaking Finnish any second now, but our men do have the winter clothing technology upgrade, I think. I'm guessing there's still some debuff to taking these unacclimatized troops and throwing them into Finland in the dead of winter, but we're just going to do it anyway at this stage. There's nothing on the UI explicitly saying that we're all going to die of frostbite, so maybe we're not. We've got this nice pocket here where these British troops are trapped now between us, the impassable bit of desert, and the Italian territories to the west, so we can delete these divisions eventually and claim a bit more territory. The Italians are doing a pretty good job actually of locking down the northern coast of Africa, which means we don't have to worry about that direction. We can mainly focus on moving south down the Nile, where we're making progress, very slow progress, but there's not much defending, so we can gradually advance the front line. We'll have another issue later where the front line is going to get very wide as you go further down and we don't have the troops to man it. That means we're not really going to advance that far with just the army we have there. We don't necessarily need to, because conquering Africa isn't going to make the biggest difference. I think it's probably worth keeping more troops up here to deal with the Scandinavia situation. Most notably, if we can take down Finland and go all the way up to the top, we can come all the way down again, down the back entrance to Sweden and Norway, and then link up with our stuff already pushing into Sweden and generally finish all that off. And by that point, well, it depends what the world looks like. We have conceded and continue to concede a few continents with our current plan. Depends if the Allies can do much with that. I feel like we have the continents with more industry at least, so that should help us out. And we know that at some point the Soviet Union's going to spam 12 million troops onto the map. Then maybe they'll do something good for us. I hope so, since I went out of my way to cheat to make sure they'd be on my side in this war. They could at least do something with it, and not require me to come over and deal with Finland for them? Well, we'll see. It is Hearts of Iron 4, so we're probably going to have to conquer the entire world ourselves, I imagine. Coming soon!